Good morning, grade 9 students. This is Mrs. Samah Ibrahim, and today we are going to start with the first part of our reading lesson on my father's shoulders. At the end of this video, you are going to be able to read the selection and then answer the analytical questions after reading the selection. Make sure before we start to prepare a draft paper, a pen, and your Beyond B. First to start is, let us watch this video.
Okay. Daddy is the sweetest daddy in the world. Daddy is the most handsome, the smartest, the most clever, the kindest. He is my Superman. Daddy wants me to do well at school. Daddy is just great.
Now, after watching the video, let's try to answer these questions. Who are the characters in the video? The girl and her father. Do they belong to the same generation? No, each has his own generation. What is the girl recalling? She is recalling various experiences she encountered with her father. How do these experiences influence her and her relation with her father? She considers her father her superhero, her advisor, her mentor, and she sees him as an idol. Now it's your turn to recall some unforgettable experiences you had with one of your parents and to tell us how do these experiences influence your relation with your parents. Our reading lesson is titled On My Father's Shoulder. What do you think the story would be about? Have you ever experienced being on your father's shoulders? How did you feel? Worried, frightened, scared of falling down, or what? Sometimes we use the idiomatic expression, you are a shoulder to lean on. What does a shoulder mean? A part of your body? Of course not. A shoulder is a supporter, a motivator, someone you count on, trustworthy mentor, shares your strengths and weaknesses. Now move to Beyond B, page 14, and read the first paragraph. Then try to decide on the characters, setting, and point of view. So who are the characters in the story? The father and his son. What is the setting of the story? It's at the father's funeral. From what point of view is the story written? The first person point of view. Why it is from the first person point of view? How did you know? Because the author is a character in the story and he uses the first person pronoun my and I. In paragraph 1, the son is telling what happened with him during his father's funeral, where memories with his father flooded in. What do you mean by flooded in? It means arrived in overwhelming amounts or quantities. He said also, I found myself trying to put my feelings about him into perspective. This means that I started to judge the real importance of the matter correctly. Then he moved on to question himself about his father who died out of a heart failure. With his father's passing away or death, he found himself defenseless, without any protection. He said, I found myself defenseless against what was ahead of me, what is in front of me, which is the hidden future. Now reread the paragraph 1 to answer these questions. How can you describe the son's feelings at the father's funeral? Why do you think he hadn't grieved over losing his father? And in his first paragraph, the writer uses a method of questioning. What is its aim? Is it meant to be answered? Pause the video and try to answer. So the first answer is he didn't show sorry for losing him, and he was trying to put his feeling into perspective to the extent that he was wondering why he didn't grieve over losing him. The second answer is maybe the son hadn't grieved over such a loss because he didn't know the value of the father. Moreover, the generation gap between them, which was obvious through different opinions, blinded him. And the third answer is the writer opens his narrative using rhetorical questions which serve his wondering about his blank feelings towards his father's death. Such kind of questions is not meant to be answered, but instead to make a point rather than finding information. These kinds of questions are called rhetorical questions. Let us move to paragraph 2 and read it in order to narrate or identify the experience the writer encountered with his father. As we notice here, there is a switch in the setting from the funeral, which is considered a present time, to his childhood, which is the past. This switch in time is called a flashback. In this flashback, the son is recalling the experience he encountered with his father holding him on his shoulder. How was he holding him? He said, bravely, a blind hero. So to his son, the father is a blindfolded hero, someone who is trusted blindly. Now pause the video, reread paragraph 2 to answer the following questions. Number 1. What image of a father is embedded in paragraph 2? The father was a brave blind hero in the eyes of his son. Number 2. Why wasn't the son scared even though the father's eyes were covered? The father is always someone who carries our burdens, comes to our rescue in terms of difficulties, and serves as a shoulder to lean on. From this point, and since childhood, a kid is always dependent on his parents to feel secure in the most difficult circumstances. In paragraph 3, he moves in the time into his teenage stage, where the clash between the two generations started. The son expected his father to encourage him much, but it seldom came. This is the gap. And then the gap was widened when he decided on taking the acting lessons. He said, we argued about it, we argued over this firm decision. So, as a result, he stormed to the room. It means he entered angrily to the room. I stared at him, trembling, and said, it was settled. It refers to what? To taking acting lessons. This means that he took the decision. As a result, the father withdrew with slumped shoulders. What do you mean by slumped shoulders? What does this mean? This can be a sign that the person is unhappy, tired, and defeated. So it means that the father gave up to his son's decision, leaving him on his own. This image shows a dissatisfied father who lost control over his son's choice of career. So he left him without any resistance. Why do you think the father didn't resist his son's final decision? Maybe the father wanted his son to designate his own path facing life challenges. Now I want you to pause the video, reread paragraph 3 in order to answer the following questions. Number 1. What change do you recognize in the relationship between the father and the son? Pick 2 pieces of evidence to support your answer. So, a certain clash of opinion is recognized where the son tends to believe that his father cares less about him and tries to prevent him from being independent. The 2 pieces of evidence are, I had expected a great deal of encouragement from my dad, but it seldom came. And the second one is refusing to take acting lessons. He stormed to my room. Now let's move to number 2. What action was the turning point in the relationship between the father and his son? Taking acting lessons. So, when the son took his firm decision by taking acting lessons despite his father's refusal, was the turning point in their relationship. Now, let's move to paragraphs 4 and 5 to read and check whether the father stopped supporting or advising his son. So as we see, he mentioned at the beginning, his general air of caution continued. How? He visits him in a Broadway show, and he still gives him advice when he said you have to find something else to fall back on, which means to depend on. When the son mentioned in the opening of paragraph 5, I thought he was right, here the son starts to realize his father's words. So, as a result, he took up newspaper work but decided to quit the job when he published his first book. When the father asked him to apply for corporation, which is a large company, he refused. So, as a result, the father kept silent. What does that mean? That the father still shows dissatisfaction, but maybe he doesn't want to interfere anymore. Now, pause the video, reread paragraphs 4 and 5 in order to answer the following questions. Number 1, refer to paragraphs 3 and 4 to compare the father's attitude towards his son. So as we see, in paragraph 3, the father shows dissatisfaction and weakness when he gave up to his son's resistance, while in paragraph 4, the father shows great caution and care when he attended his son's act show and tried to give him pieces of advice. Now, number 2, did the father stop supporting and advising his son throughout his life? And what piece of evidence shows this? So the father never stopped guiding, supporting, and advising his son, for he kept accompanying him throughout his life decisions. Now, are you ready to sum up the character development for the son throughout the story events, shedding a light on 2 stages? The first one is the childhood, and then we are going to move to the teenage state. First to start with is the childhood. During his childhood, he experiences adventures, he sits on his father's shoulders, and he considers his father as a hero. Such a period shows a dependency of the son on his father. We move to the other stage, which is teenage. In teenage stage, he considers his father careless, he fights and opposes him, and he resists his father's decision. Here we can touch the difference in the personality from childhood to teenage. This clash of opinion emphasizes the generation gap between the father and the son. This period is natural in the teenage, where children tend to be independent and build up their own personality. Now it's time to practice. Identify whether each statement is true or false. The father died out of heart failure at the age of 80. False. At the age of 75. Number 2. After his father's death, he starts to judge the real importance of the matter. This is true. Number 3. The father supported his son when choosing acting lessons. Of course not. He disagreed him. Number 4. The son applied to a corporation. False. The son intended to remain self-employed. Thank you for your attention. Stay home and stay safe, and don't forget Time spent with your family is worth every second.